It's a super secret CFL stream, you guys. Look how secret it is. We've never done this before, but we're going to do the CFL show live. So, look, the show is already late as it is. Wow, that's some God rays that are going. I'm going to have to do something with that. Our show's already late as it is. So, hey, why not have a little fun and do a live CFL stream in the middle of a Thursday, completely unannounced? Big Wildcat, what's going on, man? Awesome. I'm glad you're able to make it out. Like I was kind of saying, the show's late anyway, so why not have some fun with it this week? And the fun that we're going to have with it this week is doing the show live. So while we wait a little bit, just for maybe some people to roll in, hopefully some people to roll in. Again, I gave absolutely no fair warning that I was going to be doing this. But what we're going to do for a few minutes here is, while we're waiting for some people to come in, we're going to build this CFL fantasy roster for this week, because I have not touched that whatsoever. So I'm going to go ahead and build this live here right at the beginning of the show. So we're going to pop over. I'd share my screen with you if I could, but right now that's a little too advanced for this this poor, simple streaming rookie Canadian. So we are going to go and take a look at our roster options. We're going to start at quarterback. We got Zach Collaros at 10-8. Collaros isn't playing this week, so obviously we're not going to want to put money there. Cornelius at 10-5. Boy, that's hefty. Jake Mayer, 9,500. MBT, 9,300. Trevor Harris, 87.76. There might be some value there. Boy, Vernon Adams is still like 77.15. That is really tough value to not take when you look at his last two games have been 20 points and 18 points. And that is a ton of value at that dollar amount. Apologize for the mouse clicking in the background if you happen to hear that. Boy, unless you want to go Drew Brown for the true, like, bare bones value. I mean, Caleb Evans, he had 2 rushing touchdowns last week, so that's a possibility. I think we're going to have to stick with Vernon Adams here just as the value play at quarterback. Let's see. What's Big Cat saying? Blue Bombers probably, yeah. I think they've already actually officially announced that they're starting Drew Brown. Let's see. I'll be going to the Lions game this Saturday. Awesome. Fantastic. I hope you have a great time. I absolutely positively have to get out to a game next year. Unfortunately, schedules didn't allow me to go to Touchdown Atlantic, but I really want to go to an Alouettes game in Montreal. Hamilton's a possibility. Toronto's a possibility. They're all really close trips. Ottawa would be a possibility. So I absolutely have to get out to a game next year. We're going to go ahead and we're going to grab Vernon Adams, I think, because Winnipeg is definitely getting into the area of resting some of their guys. Let's pop over to running back here. We got Kadeem at almost 89, James Butler at 87, Oliveira at 72. Don't know whether he plays this week or not. William Stanback at 65.08. He's back. He got a snap share last week. I think they're probably going to see a lot. He's not even on the injury report anymore. So I think we'll have to probably roll with William Stanback at running back. And who we're going to complement him with, I think I'd be stupid maybe to not take Wes Hills, because my God, what a massive game he had last week. Although much different and much more difficult opponent that actually has stuff to play for this week. So let's keep going down. Is there another value play to grab there? I tell you, Jackson Bennett kind of had the bulk of Ottawa's carries and last week, and William Powell's not playing this week. So that could be a decent little amount of value there. And he also has value as a pass catcher, which he showed last week, catching 4 for 25. Let's why don't we roll the dice on Jackson Bennett there in the absence of another great option. I think Kadim's going to be on a touch count or touch share. James Butler is a lot of money to dedicate at the running back position. I don't know whether Brady Oliveira is going to play. Basically, I think it's either AJ Ouellette or um, AJ Ouellette or Jackson Bennett. So let's put Jackson Bennett in there right now, at least as a placeholder, which is leaves me. I still have 23-2 in my roster left to spend. Will the Bombers start Augustine at running back? They could very well. I mean, they've got nothing left to play for. So, I mean, honestly, like, why not? There's going to be other starters that don't play this week. I wouldn't be shocked, to be perfectly honest, if they sat a guy like Dalton Schoen, although you're really playing with fire because he's a rookie. Let's move over to wide receiver here. And really the name of the game, I think, at this point is high-end guys that actually have stuff to play for. So, like, Nick Dembski is an automatic no for Winnipeg, especially where he's a veteran. He might sit this week, especially not at 10 grand. I think we're getting close to getting priced out on Dalton Schoen at $9,300. Dominique Rhymes is definitely a possibility there because, look, he had 5 for 76 last week, and his team still has plenty to play for. So I think we might be looking at maybe Dominique Rhymes, which would also stack with our quarterback. So let's go ahead and pop him in there. Curly Gittins would be another definite option. I'm probably not going to roll with a defense this week yet again. Dylan Mitchell. Big Cat mentioned him in the chat there. 6 passes for 107 yards. His last 4, 5. My God. Yeah, he's been a monster. He's been an absolute, and he's been reliable too. So let's go ahead and grab Dylan Mitchell. That leaves me 8,000 in my flex. Let's see if there's a decent option that I want to grab there in my flex. For 8,064 to be exact. Oh, wow, there's a lot of injuries people are dealing with this week. Markeith Ambles or Keon Hatcher would certainly be possibilities there. What happens if I take out Jackson Bennett and go with where are you? And go with AJ Ouellette. So if I don't go Jackson Bennett and I take AJ Ouellette, that leaves me 5,000 in the flex, 5,017. Do I have an option here that I really, really like? Let's see. Jake Weineke, Cameron Phillips, Justin Hardy for Ottawa got a ton of volume last week, like 11 catches. I think he had 13 targets. He's had a lot of value over his last 2 games after not playing since week 2. 14.4 against BC and 18.9 against Montreal just last week. Yeah, why don't we go with that? Why don't we go with Justin Hardy against Montreal's secondary, just based on the volume that he's getting? Still gives me a ton of options, or a ton of money left over, 1122, in case anything changes in the next little bit. Let's see. Big Cat in the chat. Jalen Acklin injured, so Darvin Adams, that's a possibility. Stephen Dunbar, if he plays. Yeah, Acklin, exactly. With Jalen Acklin being injured, I think that's only going to throw more targets the way of a guy like Darvin Adams, or again, Justin Hardy, where he's had a ton of volume over the last couple of weeks. I think that's what we'll wind up going with. We're going to go Vernon Adams at quarterback, Stanback and AJ Ouellette at running back. We're going to go Dominique Rhymes at wide receiver. We're going to complement him with Dylan Mitchell, who's getting a ton of volume. And we're going to go with Justin Hardy in the flex for the exact same reason, who's getting a ton of value. So yeah, Ottawa's also in a must-win situation. Big Cat, you're absolutely right. So I think that's what we'll wind up going with our fantasy roster. We'll run over it one more time when it gets to that point in the show. I'm going to take a sip of my tea. and then we will officially get started. This is exciting. It's exciting to do this show live. By the way, Big Cat, do you want to let me know in the chat how the audio sounds? Just want to make sure that my audio sounds clear and okay. So if you don't mind letting me know that before we get started, that would be tremendous. I mean, I assume it sounds fine. Sounds perfect. Awesome. That's great. All right. So with no further ado, just like I do on my NFL show, I will give you a TV countdown, and then we will get started with the Week 19 show live. In 5, 4, 3. What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at Nerd Tees, and we're doing this bad boy live this week. Welcome to Week 19 of my 2022 CFL football pick show, Week 19 live. So look, the episode is late as it is, so hey, why not do something a little extra fun? We're gonna have some fun this week. I feel like, I've been too dour on my CFL stuff over the last little bit. We're gonna have some fun this week. So last week, even money in week 18, 2-2 straight up, 2-2 against the spread, 2-2 over under means I was 6-6 for the week. 45-24 straight up, 41-28. Geez, if I was 21-48, can you imagine? 41-28 against the spread, and still 5 games under 500 on the totals. Means I'm 118-89 on the season. It's just right. It's actually right on 57%. I'd like to be closer to 60, and that's kind of the path I'm trying to forge here. 6-6 last week doesn't do me any favors. I really have to be a monster here for the last 3 weeks. Let's see if we can't do just that. Now, where I have been a monster is in CFL fantasy over the last 2 weeks, following up last week's 100-point performance with another 100-point performance in week 18, 112 points exactly on my fantasy roster last week, and that was head and shoulders headlined by Dalton Schoen, wide receiver for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. 7 catches for $162 through the air with 3 touchdown receptions, good for over 41 points just on his own. Dalton Schoen basically slamming the door on any conversation about rookie of the year. And look, he's making a case for himself for like, is he making a most outstanding player case? I mean, I understand that all of those passes have to come from the quarterback that they're coming from. And I think Zach Collaros is firmly in the MOP conversation, but I don't discount Dalton Schoen as a dark horse in that conversation. I'm up to 1553.8 in fantasy on the season. I'm still in 8th place out of 50 in the official Atlantic Schooners CFL Fantasy Football League, but I did basically just gain big chunk yardage on everybody else in that pool. I'm still in 8th place, but now only trail first by less than 70 points, which means I gained by nearly 18 full points over last week, which is an awesome feeling. I lead 10th place now by over 31 points, so I gained just about 9 points on 10th place. I'm now over 150 points up on 20th. That's not even in the conversation anymore. Eyes on the prize. It's less than 70 points. It's right there. If I make a run here in these last few weeks, it's not completely out of the question that I might snag one of the top spots in this pool, which would feel very awesome. So for those of you who have been watching live from the beginning or watching right from the beginning of the VOD, we did just take a little bit of time and set my CFL fantasy football roster for week 19. We'll go over it here with you one more time. I've got Vernon Adams at quarterback, and I'm stacking him with Dominique Rhymes as my top wide receiver option. My running backs, I'm going William Stanback and AJ Ouellette. I expect a real amp up in William Stanback's touches this week, and AJ Ouellette has just been providing like calm and consistent value basically all season long, but especially in the last little bit. Dylan Mitchell is who I'm sliding in as my wide receiver too, has been getting a ton of volume in the Edmonton Elks pass game. So he's my number 2 wide receiver. And at flex, I'm grabbing Justin Hardy, a value play at under $3,900. Got wicked target share last week. I think 13 targets, brought in 11 of them. Ottawa's missing several key receivers this week. So I think that is only going to increase for Justin Hardy. Was a great value play there at $38.95, and that is my CFL fantasy football roster for week 19. We're looking for our third straight week of 100+ points. All right, let's come back over here to the chat. Let's see. Big Wildcat in the chat says, I'm 12 points behind you in fantasy right now. Well, you ain't gonna catch me. No, 12 points is nothing. 12 points is one good week. So we are right there. We've been basically right there with each other almost all season long, I think. I had a couple of stumbles there in the early season, but I've been on a pretty decent trajectory here since that point. So we've been pretty close to each other, I think, all year long. All right, our slate of games here in week 19. Sorry for the rumble there, the earthquake. In week 19, the Riders are on bye, and bye could not come at a worst possible time for the Riders, who are just losing ground by leaps and bounds in the playoff conversation. So Saski's on the bye. Montreal is in Ottawa. Hamilton is in Calgary. Toronto is in Edmonton, and Winnipeg is in BC. So we don't have any teams that are on the tail end of back-to-back road games this week, which is something that I absolutely pay attention to every single week, as you know, if you watch this show. So let's go. We'll start with that Montreal-Ottawa game. Alouettes are 7-8. They lost. This is a rematch, of course, of a game last week. That game finished 24-18 in favor of the REDBLACKS. I talked about Montreal's offense right in the episode last week. They had 8 touchdowns in their last 4 games. They now only have 9 in their last 5 because they only put up 1 touchdown in that game last week. The offense staying tepid. That was a game that Montreal absolutely positively could not afford to lose, because if they lose that game, they leave the door open to exactly what happened. They lose, Toronto wins, and now it's a 4-point spread where it was only 2 heading into last week, like going in the absolute wrong direction. And I think this is an Alouettes team that's more than capable of winning this division. But boy, they made it really, really hard on themselves with that performance last week. So they're now trail the Argos by 4 points. They do have a 4-point cushion on the Ticats and a 6-point cushion on the REDBLACKS. But with 3 games left, that 6-point cushion, they're not safe. Like I said, just 9 offensive touchdowns now in the last 5 games for the Alouettes. I'm expecting William Stanback's role to grow in this game. I put him in my fantasy roster for a reason, but they are not going to have Reggie White available to them this week, which is a big blow to their pass game. For Ottawa, they win in their new interim head coach's debut, which is a thing that happens in the NFL all the time. So shout out to them for that. That's their 4th win of the season. Nick Arbuckle kind of stepped up and set up Caleb Evans. Like most of Ottawa's offense, once again, was Caleb Evans and the kicker. Like that's been Ottawa's MO most of the season, and yet they look at Nick Arbuckle as their starting quarterback, which again just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Arbuckle wasn't bad in this game. To my point, he put up the yardage that put them in position for their finisher, the guy that actually puts the points on the board in Caleb Evans, to go and do exactly that. So that was your difference maker in the game right there. Ottawa obviously hasn't clinched a playoff spot. They're 2 points down to the Ticats, 4 points down to the Riders, and 6 points down to the Owls. This is still a conversation, and it's still a possibility, especially with how the Riders are just on an absolute slide here towards the end of the season. The defense worked it out last week. I was critical of them, whatever it was, 79 points against in the previous 2 games. They came up with a pretty decent performance as a full defensive unit against a team with a suffering offense. But now the offense has to deal with no Jalen Acklin, no William Powell, no Devontae Dedman. All 3 of those players were available to them last week. It changes their offense fundamentally. That's something that they're going to have to figure out. To me, this is like this has redemption game written all over it for the Alouettes. A home winless REDBLACKS team. They have not won at home at all this year. I just don't expect lightning to strike twice here. I like the Alouettes. A playoff berth should be wrapped up if Montreal gets this win. So I'm going to take the Alouettes on the road in Ottawa to get the win over the REDBLACKS. On the line, Ottawa's taking +3.5 against the spread. I actually like Montreal to cover this number. I like them to win, and I'm going to lay the 3.5. And you must be saying to yourself, Justin, how could you lay that hook? You hate laying that hook. You're absolutely right, I do. But the Alouettes have covered against the spread 5 times in 7 games on the road this year. The REDBLACKS, not only are they winless at home, they have not covered against the spread at home. They have been dogs of big numbers at home this year and have not covered them one time. I'm going to take the team that's 5-2 against the spread in this situation every single time. So even though it is laying the hook, I'm going to lay the -3.5 on the Owls. Total in the game set at 47.5. Neither one of these offenses are scary. Neither one of them put up a ton of points. They went under this number last week. I am going to stay under on it as well. Under 47.5 points in Montreal, Ottawa. Let's go. Alouettes 23, REDBLACKS 16. Montreal wins, Montreal covers, and under on the point total. All right, so that is our first game. And we got a couple more viewers in here. Again, very short notice and not exactly a convenient time for a lot of people to be able to be watching, but I appreciate the folks that are in here taking a peek. All right, let's move on to game number 2, which is the Hamilton Ticats in Calgary taking on the Stampeders. These two teams with a record that is inverse of each other. Hamilton at 5-10, Calgary at 10-5. Both of these teams won their last time out. Calgary is on a 2-game winning streak and is coming in fresh off of their bye. For Hamilton, they won 18-14 against the Riders last week. They benefited from a tail-spinning Saskatchewan Roughriders team, despite a complete collapse by Dane Evans. I don't know what this team's going to do at quarterback next year. I really don't. Dane Evans can't be the answer. He was under 50%, I think, and I think threw 2 interceptions, and they still managed to win this football game because that's just the situation that we have in Riderland right now. Obviously, Hamilton has not clinched a playoff spot. They're the number 3 team in the East Division. They trail the Owls by 4 points. They trail the Riders now by only 2, and the Riders are on bye this week. So exceptionally important game for the Hamilton Ticats in the context of the playoffs, because even at 5-10, playoffs are not out of the question yet. They also have a 2-point cushion on the REDBLACKS, like we just mentioned. Wes Hill, man. Wes Hill has arrived for the Hamilton Ticats. 25 carries, which, first of all, Hamilton in general is not that committed to the run. So 25 carries for one back is pretty fantastic in a game like that. They clobbered the Riders up on the front 7, front 8, and they got the job done. 25 carries for $132 on the ground. And Wes Hills has been averaging 70 yards a game on the ground in a limited role this year. But I think he's earning his spot. Like I would put him, like I think it spells the end of Sean Thomas Erlington in Hamilton, to be perfectly honest, or the end of Don Jackson. It's the end of one of those two guys because Wes Hill is making plays. Wes Hill needs to be on this roster next year, and he needs a spot, and he needs to be getting the ball. So it's the end of one of those two guys in Hamilton for sure. Calgary, 10-5, like I mentioned, 2-game win streak for them, coming in off of their bye and coming off of that massive defensive performance, 29-2 a couple of weeks ago against the Toronto Argos. The defense obviously completely stymied an Argos offense that can be pretty good, and it's now officially a 3-game race in the West Division with them and the Lions for the number 2 seed. So the Lions and the Stamps are currently tied. Once again, I think they both have 20 points. Calgary is currently the West number 3. So the tiebreaker right now goes to BC. But this is just a 3-game race. Who's going to do better in these last 3 games of the season? That's going to determine who gets a home playoff game and who doesn't. Now, in that game 2 weeks ago, one thing I absolutely loved is we saw a 2-1 touch split between Kadeem Carey and Peyton Logan. I think Kadeem touched the ball 15 times. Peyton touched the ball 8, or something like that. And keeping both of those guys fresh, not only for the stretch run, but specifically keeping both of them fresh for the Lions. for that playoff game that we now all know is going to happen, keeping both of those backs fresh and available and deploying them in unique ways, that makes this Calgary offense exceptionally dangerous. I've been saying it for a little while. Kadeem might be the best back in the league, but Peyton Logan is no slouch. So having both of them available and dangerous, it only spells good things for the Stamps down the stretch. So this game is clearly more interesting than it was a couple of weeks ago, because like the Stamps, like this is again their chance to kind of keep the pressure on the Lions here, and the Ticats have to win. The Ticats are in must-win territory. They have to win to survive. The real difference here between last week and this week, I don't see the Stampeders giving up 132 yards rushing. Maybe not even as a team, but certainly not to a single back. I can definitely see Saskatchewan making that a reality. I don't see the Stampeders making that a reality. And if they can't run all over them, I don't trust this Ticats team beyond that. So we're definitely on Calgary in this one. Going to take the Stamps at home to get the win over Hamilton. Also helps that I don't think Hamilton has won a game on the road yet this year. On the line, Calgary's laying 7.5 points. This number is gross to me. It's gross and I don't like it. It's gross and I don't like it. I am going to lay it. And why I really don't like this number is, situationally speaking, both of these teams have the exact same record against the spread. Calgary at home, Hamilton on the road. It's the same record, and it's not a good record. It's 1-6. Calgary's 1-6 against the spread at home this year. Hamilton is 1-6 against the spread on the road. And to have to buy an extra hook above a touchdown. It's gross, but I really think it's going to land. So we're going to lay Calgary -7.5, but we're going to do that while we do it. Total in the game set at 48.5 points. This is actually, I think, a really good number. I think this is pretty close. I'm going to skew on the fact that both teams are above 500 to the total, to the over this year. So I think I got to go over on this number. It's pretty beatable, but it's pretty good. We're going to go over 48.5 points in Calgary, Hamilton. Let's go Stamps 31, Ticats 20. And we'll pop back here into the chat. It's lunchtime in Halifax. Exactly. It's a convenient time for me. It's just not a convenient time for most of the rest of the country. Hamilton has destiny in their hands. Ticats' best finish will be 8-10, enough to qualify for the playoffs. I pick Hamilton over Calgary. Fair enough. Like, look, the Ticats are do or die. They're absolutely do or die. They basically, I would say, have to win out. And that will get them, should get them or prevent the crossover, would get them that third playoff spot in the East Division. I mean, heck, depending on the way tiebreakers land, it could still get them the second spot. This is why, like, this league is goofy sometimes, but at the same time, I love it that we're talking about like teams that are 5-10, but the possibility of them making the playoffs. I absolutely love it. So we'll take this opportunity in the show, as we always do at the halfway point, to shout out my great friends and sponsors at Nerd Tees. I'm going to take a little sip of tea before I do that. See, now you're seeing all the stuff that normally gets cut out of a regular episode. Nerd Tees and Coffee Bean. My great friends at Nerd Tees have just made that change, offering a bunch of awesome blends of flavored coffee. So if you're not a tea drinker, but you're a coffee drinker, you absolutely need to check out nerdtees.ca, and you absolutely need to use my promo code, which is BWFinest. That is going to save you 15% at checkout. You're going to get free shipping in Canada on any order over $100, which I think is excellent value. You're also going to get a great conversion rate on the US dollar if you're one of my US viewers, listeners, all that fun stuff. So the blend I have today is the same blend that I had on my NFL show on Monday night, which is Black Forest Cake. It is a dessert tea. It is delicious. I don't have my hands on any of the coffee blends yet. I'm not a huge coffee drinker, but boy, I can't wait. I cannot wait to get my hands on some of these really unique coffee blends. You need to go to nerdtees.ca and check out what they got going on over there. Nerdtees.ca. The promo code is BWFinest. Get your free shipping, save your 15%, find yourself something to love, or find someone you love something to love. You can do it on nerdtees.ca with my great friends at Nerd Tees and Coffee Bean. If Ottawa wins the rest and Montreal loses the rest, the Red Blacks get a home playoff game. Again, this league is goofy, but it's the best kind of goofy. It's amazing. All right. So let's now head into the back half of the week. Toronto is in Edmonton, Argos at the Elks. Argos improved their record to 9-6 on the season, winning 23-20 last week against the BC Lions. McLeod Bethel Thompson putting the game on his back, and he delivered 352 yards passing, including the game-winning touchdown pass. And look, they've already clinched a home playoff game. They're the number 1 seed right now in the East Division, but they do only have a 4-point cushion on the Owls, which means they could lose the bye if they're not careful. So obviously this Toronto team's not going to be resting anybody. They still have plenty to play for here down the stretch, and it's back to the good times. That was a whole team performance for the Argos last week, but the question, as it has been all season, is it real? And at no point this season basically has it actually felt real. It always feels like, yeah, but, or yeah, okay, or let's see what happens next week. That's the way this Argos team, that's the pendulum that this Argos team has been on, the roller coaster all season long. The Edmonton Elks now 4-12 on the year, losers of 2 straight. And as I basically called this game perfectly, like Winnipeg absolutely clobbered them in order to secure everything that they want, which is the first round bye and the home playoff game, the West Final at home, and all that stuff that Winnipeg really covets. They did exactly that with a 48-11 beatdown at the expense of these Edmonton Elks. And hey, no need to worry about calling a vanilla halfback draw on 3rd and 3 in a game that you lose 48-11. So at least there's that. We don't have to worry about the ridiculous play calls. Now, look, despite all that, despite a massive loss like that, again, goofiness. Edmonton is still alive mathematically for a playoff spot. They only trail the Riders by 4 points. They have 2 games left. I believe they can catch them, and that could potentially, mathematically, I believe, secure them the crossover where they could still potentially, I believe, make the playoffs. Now, if my math is wrong about that, please feel free to correct me, but I think they still mathematically have a chance at it. I mean, but the game last week was over after the first quarter. And again, as anticipated, look, they're professionals and they play the game with pride. So there will be resistance in this game. Edmonton will come into this game wanting to win, especially because they haven't won at home since Methuselah was a rookie. So it's been a long time since these guys have won a game at home. How much resistance we will see, that of course remains to be seen. So I'm very torn with this game. I'm torn between what probably happens, which is that the Argos probably win and probably convincingly, and I'm torn between the funsies. So the fun answer here is the Elks win and leave the East Division as interesting as possible. I've been saying it over the last couple of weeks. That's the fun answer. And I sit here and I look at my vast YouTube empire. Just follow me here. And I say, reminiscent of Richard III, a horse, my kingdom for a horse, my kingdom for an Edmonton Elks win at home. I've been calling for it all year. Why not go down with the ship? The Edmonton Elks at home. Let's take the fun answer, folks. Let's have fun. The Edmonton Elks at home upset the Toronto Argos, at least in part, because I don't want to have to take the Elks next week when they're home to BC. I really don't want to do that. So let's take the Elks to win at home, upset the Toronto Argos this week. Edmonton gets the win. On the line, Toronto is laying 5.5 points here as a road favorite, which they absolutely deserve to be. But I'm taking Edmonton to win the game outright. So give me the 5.5 points. I would consider a hedge here one way or the other, but I'm more than happy to take the 5.5 points here with Edmonton, especially where I expect them to win. Now, total in the game is set at 50.5 points. I'm going to grab the over here. I'm going to take some fireworks to go along with what would be a big upset win. So let's go over 50.5 points in Edmonton, Toronto. Let's go Edmonton 30, Toronto 28. Just give me a pause here for 1 second. Sorry about that, folks. Thank you very much. So yeah, we're going to take Edmonton to win. I'm going to take Edmonton with the points, and we're going to grab over 50.5. Did my mute button actually work there, by the way? I assume it did. I hope it did. If it didn't, it didn't. What are you going to do? But yeah, so I did toss that on mute. So hopefully that works. All right, it did. Perfect. Lovely, lovely. Oh, we got some more people in the chat here. Fantastic. If Ottawa wins the rest of Montreal, right? Big Cat. Trey Ford might start. That might be interesting. I mean, look, I thought Trey did some interesting things before he got hurt. So that's interesting. Oh, Elks eliminated. Riders hold the tiebreaker. Okay, so I've been informed the Elks actually can't mathematically make the playoffs. Whatever. Let's just keep having fun. Advantage goes to Ticats as the East team, says Gorian. Gorian, how you doing, my friend? If it's tie, same number of points, makes sense within the division that it's head-to-head. Casey thinks I'm absolutely crazy, I'm assuming, for taking the Edmonton Elks to win. All right, perfect. So, look, they don't have anything to play for, but they are professionals with pride, so let's see if they can't play some spoiler. Now, the last game we are going to look at this week, the last game of the week, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in BC to take on the Lions. Winnipeg now 14-2, and off the basis of that 48-11 win against Edmonton as winners of 2 straight. Look, they're in cruise control. They've clinched everything there is to clinch, and the resting begins now. I believe they've already stated that Drew Brown will be getting the start at quarterback. There are other starters here who are expected to sit. Now, I'm seeing some hand-wringing on Twitter over this. Like, oh my God, if they start resting people, like what happens when then the game really matters and the games are for real? Y'all are acting like they haven't done this the last, like, especially certainly last year. It's exactly what they did last year. With 2 games left, they had nothing left to play for. They rested starters the second to last game of the year. And in the last game of the year, basically had their full complement heading into the bye that they would have before the West Final. So they're following the exact same blueprint. The exact same blueprint. So to quote the Joker, it's all part of the plan. Like, just relax. Like, this is exactly what they wanted, and it's exactly what they're going to do. Now, for the BC Lions, now 10-5 on the year. They really had the inside track there for the West number 2, but it's not an inside track anymore. It's basically a 3-game dead heat as they dropped that game 23-20 in Toronto last week against the Argos. And look, they had a chance there. The Argos scored that late touchdown. BC basically started their final drive of the game at midfield because of a really, really nice return off of the second kick that they had to do. Beatty kicked off. There was a penalty, so they had to take it back. He kicked off again. They got a much better return. They start at midfield. They gain yardage, a 41-yard field goal attempt, which should be makeable for any kicker in professional football. White rings it off the upright. It doesn't wind up happening. So we could be getting into some bad voodoo here for the Lions. That is a game that probably should have gone to overtime, but didn't. But hey, don't put yourselves in that position. So they lost that game. They're still 10-5. They're still going to the postseason, but we really got to watch this Lions team here down the stretch. This game is must win. Not only with the Bombers beginning to rest some of their starters, it's absolutely a must-win game because the Stamps have the easier schedule down the stretch. They absolutely have an easier schedule. I think the Stamps play the Riders twice. And look, this BC team, they got to play Winnipeg here. They got to play Winnipeg again the last week of the season. Yes, they do get Edmonton next week. The game's in Edmonton, but it's an easier schedule for Calgary. This game is not a game with everything going in their favor that the Lions can afford to let slip through their fingers. So that's what makes this so interesting, because the Lions should play this game as if their season's on the line. It's not, but playing a home playoff game is certainly more comfortable than not playing a home playoff game. And I do firmly believe that this defense for the BC Lions is more than capable of beating a sophomore quarterback, which is what they're going to be up against this week. So let's grab the Lions here at home over the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Winnipeg did lose the last 2 games of the regular season last year when they were doing this exact same strategy, so shouldn't come as a shock. But we're going to grab the Lions here at home to get the win over Winnipeg. On the line, BC's only laying 1.5 against the spread. This line opened at BC minus 3.5. It's already down to BC minus 1.5. If you can hold out where this is the last game of the week, and you might potentially get BC at plus money here, or BC at a plus line against the spread. I only have to lay 1.5 with them. I like them to win. It's a small price to pay. Let's lay the minus 1.5 on BC. Total in the game set at 49.5 points. This feels like a playoff type game, playoff type atmosphere, even though the Bombers will not have their full complement of players. I'm going to skew away from a shootout in this one, and I'm going to lean under here. Let's go under 49.5 points in BC and Winnipeg. Let's go Lions 24, Bombers 20. So we got BC wins, BC covers, and under the point total. Let's see. Last game, I blame the firefighter. Sean White is a backup firefighter for the city of White Rock. A job runs in his family. His dad was a firefighter. Okay, fair enough. I just bet 20 minutes tennis. No idea what that is. Okay, right on. So let's run over our CFL picks here one more time at the tail end here of week 19. I got the Montreal Alouettes beating the Ottawa REDBLACKS 23-16, which means I'm laying the minus 3.5 on Montreal in a game that stays under 47.5 points. I got the Calgary Stampeders over the Hamilton Ticats 31-20, which means I'm laying minus 7.5 on Calgary in a game that goes over 48.5 points. I got the Edmonton Elks upsetting the Toronto Argos 30-28, which means I'm taking plus 5.5 on Edmonton in a game that goes over 50.5 points. And I got the BC Lions beating a half-manned Winnipeg Blue Bombers team 24-20, which means I'm laying minus 1.5 on the Lions in a game that stays under 49.5 points. So there you go. Those are my picks for Week 19 in the CFL, the live edition of the Week 19 CFL Pick Show. I want to thank everybody for coming out to check out this completely impromptu live stream, a live stream that I certainly was not planning on having. But again, you run behind with your scheduling, and it is what it is, as they say. So those are the picks for Week 19. I hope you enjoyed hearing it. I hope you enjoyed being with us here for the live show. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at Nerd Teas and Coffee Bean. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you again for the Week 20 show, which will be happening live from my hotel room because I'm heading on vacation in just a couple of days. I'll be recording the Week 20 show from my hotel room. So we will see you then next week. I'm hoping to be back to Wednesday. I don't see any reason why I wouldn't be. So we will see you then. Thank you so much for popping in. We're going to cut the stream off now. Thanks for being here, folks. We'll see you next week.